Hi, everyone. Welcome to Turning Point. I'm your host, Blaine Birch, co-founder and CEO at Dryrun, where you can forecast your cash flow, model scenarios, and see the future of your business. And joining me today is Adam Levinter, founder and CEO of Scriberbase. I'm really excited to hear about this because I've been kind of checking it out, checking out Scriberbase. It looks really fascinating. Thanks for joining me, Adam.
Great to be here.
But before we get up to Scriberbase and what that's all about, I do want to get all the way back to the beginning and get a good idea of how you started as an entrepreneur. Like, what was the first thing you did, and what was the first time, I guess, you realized you were interested in being an entrepreneur?
I sort of fell into entrepreneurship by accident. So I left my corporate job in 2009 after 3.5 years working for a big multi-channel retailer in the US in the corporate strategy world. I was working in an MBA pit, is what I call it. We put in very long hours, learned quite a bit actually, but at the end of the day, knew that I was after something else. I wanted more control. I was chasing more ambition. I knew that my sort of career trajectory in the corporate world would have a proverbial glass ceiling, so to speak, on my earnings. So I left. I joined a startup in about 2009. That startup went to zero very quickly within 6 months. And I started consulting on my own in the world of e-commerce and digital. And that was the beginning of it. And I would say that was about 15 years ago. So I've been on my own for 15 years.
It's and once you're on your own, it's pretty much impossible to go back. I find I hear it all the time from founders, friends of mine that have exited, and they gotta wait out their year or 2 or 3 years before they can leave and bring all their money with them, and it always seems to be a real challenge because it's something addictive about building something and seeing opportunity and being able to chase after it. But I wanted to explore a little bit. So first of all, what was the startup that you went to? What was it like? And what were some of the I guess the things you learned from being able to just sort of see firsthand what happened there?
Yeah, I would agree. And one of the things I always find interesting is that people feel like they have more control if they work for someone else, that it's less risky. And I actually have had the opposite experience where, I've written a paycheck to myself for the better part of 15 years. And while on the surface it feels scary to take the leap, you actually are in control of your own destiny. And we're in an era now in the corporate world where there is no more loyalty to employees and there's no more loyalty to employers. And so, in my opinion, it's actually quite risky to take the corporate career path.
I actually feel the same way because I remember having that conversation like 25 years ago with my wife, and same sort of thing is like, hey, in a job, then get rid of me tomorrow. When I'm on my own, I can always make a buck, but I also have a chance to, like, again, that ceiling isn't there. I have a chance to make a lot more, a lot less, but I can always grind something out. So where, like, I want to go back to just some of those formative experiences that you had when you left and you joined a startup, and just what were some of the I know you're only there kind of 6 months, but there must have been something there that you found intriguing because it eventually, again, led you to do your own startup.
I think what was intriguing about it was how quickly that company went to 5+ million in top line revenue. It was just as much of a free for all back to zero, but the rise to 5+ million was so fast, and that team was so dynamic. That business was just run by a few individuals. I thought, wow, this is an incredible trajectory for a startup in a very short period of time. How do I try my hand at that? I think that was what was going through my head.
It's and there's obviously life of a startup is different for every business, and to have trajectory like that going up is rare. It's tough. To go back down is probably more common. It's a tough road to travel. But so you went from there to consulting. So what was like you mentioned, kind of e-commerce. So what was the impetus to do that? What was it that you found that you could sort of share with people and offer some value?
Well, I had some experience with the startup in the world of e-commerce. previous to that, I was working on the corporate strategy side for Sears Holdings and building their business plans and business strategy for the online business. So I have a background in business. I have an MBA. I took that experience, leveraged it in the corporate strategy world, and then took that into the online or digital world. And I think it was very timely, right? 2010 and beyond. I mean, lots of businesses were building their online presence, trying to figure out
Mm-hmm.
the customer acquisition funnel side of things, and so I knew I could add value there.
Yeah, it was a really interesting time, like that whole 2009, 2010. Then there was the inevitable the recession that hit and changed things, and had impact, maybe not as much as the last few years here has had impact on small business, of course. But tell me a little bit about the your experience of actually consulting and getting sort of to be able to pull back the curtain on these businesses and be able to contribute to them, but also I imagine there's also a lot of learning that goes on at the same time.
Well, I was using the initial consulting stuff as an R&D foundation for what I wanted to do next. So I think it was clear to me that I was a bit in transition, right? I had gone from the corporate world to a startup that went to zero, and now I'm consulting on my own. I was kind of searching for what was going to be next, and I stumbled upon a client opportunity, a company that wanted me to come in and do an audit of the business, figure out what was going on, and then start this sort of digital arm of the company, which they had been thinking about for some time. And so throughout that process of just getting more embedded with that client, I realized that there was an opportunity actually for me to take over that subsidiary, control it, and grow it on my own. And so through that relationship, through that sort of year and a half of working as a supplier, so to speak, I had also architected myself a deal whereby I would take over this subsidiary that they no longer wanted or wanted to grow, and acquired it. So I sort of, that's why I say I sort of stumbled into entrepreneurship by accident.
And so, what opportunity did you see there? I guess because it's interesting if they're kind of distancing themselves because it isn't maybe the right fit for them, but you obviously saw some opportunity there that either they didn't or they didn't want to take advantage of, or what was it that attracted you to this business?
Well, the partners were not in a good place. So the two stakeholders in the business were not getting along. There were some politics involved. They had conflicting opinions about the direction of the business. One was more traditional, one was more progressive. Neither of them really wanted to focus on this new online division of the business. And I did, and I saw an opportunity in the couponing space. It was a couponing business. It was my first real business, so to speak, that I started in 2011. And this was back in the Groupon days, right? This was when daily deals were quite popular. Groupon became popular. I mean, it was almost like overnight that couponing exploded. And I was watching that trend and thought, wow, I could get involved in that space and grow a business, fairly quickly. And so that's the opportunity that I took.
So I remember that time. I remember the time that sort of Groupon seemed to appear out of nowhere, and it doesn't, like, I don't even know, is Groupon still around? Like, it seemed to have was that business model, is that still around, or was it a fairly short lived? Like, what sort of happened there that it grew so quickly, and then I don't know if it's still around even.
So the couponing space got so saturated so quickly, and hindsight is 2020 as an entrepreneur. And I will tell you that I hung on too long. We did end up selling that. Excuse me. Selling that business in 2018. But the best time to have sold that couponing business was at the peak of couponing, 2013, 2014. Our business was flying high during those years. And that's when we could have commanded a a really healthy multiple for the business. But I was young at the time. I was early 30s and thought I had the next great thing. Ego
Mm-hmm.
gets in the way, and you don't want to sell. Um,
Yeah.
Certainly, you don't want to sell when business is going well. And actually, I would tell founders that that is the exact time you want to sell, or at least explore a sale, is when business is
Yeah.
going great. So we, as I tell people, we rode the Groupon wave up and back down again, and learned a
Mm-hmm.
lot of lessons along the way. I ended up parlaying a lot of that knowledge into my next business that I run today, but that's another story.
Well, and it's oh man, that's the kind of the strength and weaknesses in entrepreneurs is you're um, tend to be wildly optimistic, always looking at opportunity and always trying to grow something, right? And so it's probably hard when you're at the when you looking back, like you said, hindsight's 2020. You don't know that you're in the peak, right? Like you think it's going to continue and continue and continue, and that's what entrepreneurs want to continue to drive and grow. And you're right. It is the best time to sell. Of course, it's like that famous Warren Buffett quote always goes through my head. He said, "I got rich by selling too soon."
Mm.
And I think, yeah, that's good advice. It's sometimes it's not selling at the highest. It's not buying at the lowest. It's like, yeah, this is a really good return, and very tough to do when you're in the midst of it. And then I imagine once it starts to get more and more challenging, it's you think it's going to come back. You think you have a way back, and it makes it a real challenge to I imagine to sort of pivot or to step away, right?
I also would say that, just to add to your point, Blaine, that people smell the margins from a mile away. So
Mm-hmm.
you could be in a pretty unsaturated space, and your rise to, a million or 2 million or 3 million in top line could be pretty quick. But your fall
Mm-hmm.
back down to a million or back to zero can be twice as fast as the ascend. And what tends to happen is, if you are in a space that is initially not that competitive, or people like to use the term blue ocean, or there's lots of white space, or the TAM is
Mm-hmm.
big and it doesn't look like there's a lot of players. If you're generating healthy margins in that category, new entrants smell that and they come into the waters pretty quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
couponing was case in point. We were watching the rise of Groupon. We were watching the rise of daily deal sites, and a lot of these businesses were very healthy until they weren't. And
Mm-hmm.
what happened? Well, competition happened.
Yeah. And there was, I guess, like an incredibly low barrier to entry. I'm guessing is there probably wasn't that much that you could differentiate in that space. I'm guessing. Like I don't know the space well outside of used a few of them, but it was going back probably like however many years, 10 years ago or whatever. Um, so I imagine that had a pretty formative experience for you. So you said you sold that in 2018. Is that when you kind of said, okay, here's my next thing, or had you already started to shift or start thinking about what that next thing is, or how did that happen?
I think I lost passion for the business first. I think I was pretty um, upset by the descend, that we were experiencing as a company.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like we wouldn't be able to recapture what we had in 2013 or in 2014. And
Mm-hmm.
I knew deep down, like, our value proposition just wasn't compelling for the market anymore. And it's tough to be in that position as a founder when you don't see a way out and you don't see a pivot.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was that, the value proposition was weak. The market didn't want what we were selling anymore. People were gravitating to new entrants and better offers. And
Mm-hmm.
I was, I was checked out mentally. I was checked out. I knew I
Yeah.
wanted to do something else. I didn't know what that next thing would be. I knew it would be something entrepreneurial, but I definitely knew it wasn't going to be continuing to do this, to run this couponing company.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's some of the biggest challenges for a business, an entrepreneur, is to know to recognize when something isn't working, and sometimes you're pivoting, sometimes you're ending, sometimes you're striking out at a new opportunity. That's just unfortunately is part of the journey all the time, and and a lot of times it's not. It's external factors that are, you can do everything right. It doesn't mean it's going to work. And sometimes people can do just about everything wrong, and it's the timing's right and the market's right, and it just kind of works, right? Um, so you exited from that, or and then that's okay. That's now in the past, and you're starting to look for what that next sort of opportunity is, the next venture. What were you thinking at that time? What was what was in your head, and what were you doing to kind of figure out what that next step was?
Well, I was doing a lot of soul searching because I had a very trying year in 2014, coming out of actually the best year in the business, on the personal side. So my father had a devastating, life-changing stroke.
Mm-hmm.
I had a second child on the way, with a 50% chance of living. All this was
Oh,
going on at the same time.
mm-hmm.
And I decided through a lot of therapy and meditation and journaling and all this other stuff, that the next thing would be more meaningful, that I definitely didn't want to continue doing this. And my filter,
Mm-hmm.
this being the couponing business that I was running. And look, my filter for getting into the business at the beginning when I was 33 is a lot different than my filter today. And I think that's just part of maturing as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
At 33, I'm single or I'm engaged at the time. We have no kids, my wife and I. Um, we're living in a rental apartment. Life is good. And I'm thinking to myself, like, can I scale this business profitably and quickly, and can I make a lot of money from it? Great, I'll do it. There was no other filter by which I was deciding whether or not to jump into something.
Mm-hmm.
After 2014, I started to ask myself tougher questions like, is this a business I really enjoy? Is this a business that I'm very passionate about? Is this a business that I think is adding value for its consumers on a deep level?
Mm-hmm.
Is this a business that ultimately I'm going to be proud to talk about to my children when they're older? And all of these answers were no, like
Mm-hmm.
right down the page. And so that was the beginning of the end for me. Now, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
have clarity as to what I wanted to do next post sale, but I knew it would be something different. And for me, what ended up happening was, I had this expertise that we had built up through the couponing business, which was in the world of subscription commerce membership, because the model was different than Groupon. We were gating hundreds of thousands of coupons behind a paywall and charging the end user a membership fee to get access to as many coupons as they wanted. So long as they were a member paying $15 a month, they could access as many daily deals as they wanted. 1, 10,
Okay.
100, 1,000. It didn't matter. So it was ultimately a membership or subscription model. Now, subscription commerce, as you know, is a major theme today.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote a book called The Subscription Boom, published in 2020, which I'll get to in a moment. But what ended up happening was post exit, I had people asking me, and this is interesting because it's history repeating itself. I just started consulting again. I had companies asking me for advice as to how best to implement a subscription or membership model in their business, because they were watching the trajectory of the subscription world. They had
Mm-hmm.
seen Dollar Shave Club sell to Unilever for $1 billion. And they were saying to themselves, like, hey, we have widgets that we could sell on a subscription.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why can't we do that? Why can't we be the
Yep.
next version of Dollar Shave Club with whatever product, right? And then on the services side, B2B companies were saying, like, how do we transition to a membership or an access model whereby we can generate recurring revenue? So I just started consulting, and that was sort of let's say, the top of the first inning of Scriberbase, which is now 6.5 years old. And in between, I had written the book. I doubled down because I was sort of seeing the trends in the subscription world. I thought it was interesting. I'd always wanted to write a book. That was a big objective and goal of mine. So that was a
Mm-hmm.
New Year's resolution coming out of 2018. So I spent 2.5 years writing. Um, Subscription Boom came out in 2020. That still acts as the main calling card for the business today. The thesis of that book is still hyper relevant, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was, exploring, right, tinkering with other stuff. I got into podcasting. Um, So I've got 2 shows now. One I do for myself, one I do for Shopify, and working with startups, advising, doing a little bit of angel investing, and just trying to get myself involved in things that made me happy.
It's I've been through some of the same sort of challenges, some life altering things, and looking at, do I want to do this for the rest of my life, and making a kind of a change. Like, I had a creative agency for over a decade, and then Dryrun was just like a kind of a passion project for me. Having gotten through 2008, 2009, suddenly finance was front and center, and figuring out a way to get through it and to thrive again uh, it was sort of the starting point for Dryrun. Um, in my experience, though, and see what if it feels the same to you as well, but in my experience, I went from something I was really familiar with. I'd built this business, understood it inside out, upside down, and then decided, yeah, do a SaaS product. It can't be that much different. Turns out it's really, really different, and it's like a whole new uh, education and a epically high risk level compared to project-based business where we are profitable the day we open our doors, because I had landed a contract and off we go. Right. Um, tell me a little bit about making some of these transitions, because you say, like, you knew this subscriber, that you knew the environment, you knew that you wrote a book about it. Tell me about the business model that you moved to with Scriberbase. Tell me, like, what that's about, and a bit about, like, how you actually envisioned and built a business off of something that was different than where you came from.
Well, through a series of pivots is the short answer. The long answer is I really didn't know what Scriberbase would look like over time. So there was a demand and an interest in subscription commerce in general. I was getting a lot of inbound related to that. I was doing some consulting, right, to start, at least at the beginning. But to your point, on the SaaS product thing, the first version of Scriberbase was actually to try and take some of the tools and systems we had built for Aragon, my previous business, and then package it up and be sort of a subscription software solution for early stage product-based subscription companies. That didn't work. We also, at one point, had some sort of 3PL logistics offering related to subscription commerce. That didn't work either. All the while in the background, we were consulting in this space, and people wanted our expertise. And so that part of the value proposition was sticking, but the other stuff related to the SaaS product and the logistics piece was falling flat. So it was just sort of like following the demand side of the business and understanding, like, what does the market want? Like, what is the market asking me for? And if it's specific expertise in this world, like, that could be our swim lane. And so fast forward to today, I mean, we're 6.5 years in, we've become known, and we think of ourselves as global experts in subscription commerce, which we are. We help companies start, scale, or optimize a subscription business or business model. And that is our lane, and we stick to it. What separates us from the McKinseys, the Bains, the Deloittes of the world is that we roll up our sleeves and we execute a lot of our strategic plans. So we do all the fancy consulting work just like them, the strategy, the go-to-market, the financial modeling, the dashboard building, all of that. But to the extent that our clients want us to continue to be on board, we help execute. We do that through a series of both internal resources that we're applying to the various client mandates that we're working on, and external partners as well. So that's been the journey.
It's I want to circle back a little bit to those pivots, because I've been through those before too, and they're daunting. But when you know you got to do it, you roll up your sleeves and do it. And it's right now, because we talk with we of course we help businesses with financial modeling, scenario modeling, cash flow planning, all that kind of stuff. we're talking with business owners, finance pros mostly, that are embedded in businesses or advising businesses every day. And this is a really bouncy, lumpy time for people right now. And businesses, I know we're well past sort of COVID,
Mm-hmm.
but now we got all these other challenges, and there's damage to all these businesses that happened through the last few years. And so we're seeing a lot of businesses that are pivoting, that are scaling way back, that are doing massive changes. Um, how did you guys get through some of those pivots and successfully and be able to move on? Because not everybody makes it through those, right?
Well, in 2020, we had a year of near zero revenue. So it's not like we didn't have any bumps. We
Yeah.
did. We had a lot of client mandates get put on hold at the
Mm-hmm.
beginning of 2020. Um, it's funny when a pandemic hits, nobody has any appetite to innovate. Nobody has an appetite to work on anything new.
Mm-hmm.
And what we offer to the market is very progressive, right? Effectively, we are working with companies that want to fundamentally change the way they approach their business or business model. And that feels very ambitious, and that feels very forward thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, people cramp down when the world gets locked down because of a virus flying through. So
Yeah.
it was really tough. I mean, it was not easy. Thankfully, I had other outlets. Um, I was finishing up the book. I was working on my podcast. I had some other personal projects on the go. So I tried to shift focus, but yeah, 2020 was a terrible year.
Yeah, and I know a lot of businesses have shared that, and we've had our challenges through COVID and through today and through a pivot and all of that, and there's times where I look back and go, man, I don't know how we did that, like how we just kept digging in, and we still have, but it's like we've come through the hard part now, which is it's like, oh, thank God, this is a better year than last, and but there must have been like for you to be able to see like, hey, this is going to come back, and it did start to come back. Like, when did you start to see the signs that it's like, yeah, the timing and the pandemic were a kick in the teeth, but this is going to come back, and we've got opportunity here.
Um, my feeling was that the virus at some point will work itself out. Things will open up again, and the thesis that I had written about in the book is something that I was doubling down on. I mean, I'm all in on subscription commerce. My feeling to this
Mm-hmm.
day is if your business doesn't have recurring revenue, you're going to zero within 5 years. We have moved from a transactional economy to a relationship driven economy. I don't care what great company you're following, chances are they are a subscription business at the core, whether it's Amazon, Netflix, Spotify, Shopify, even Walmart. These
Mm-hmm.
businesses have significant recurring revenue, or at least a portion of their business coming from recurring revenue. Um, and so, yeah, and we're following the market quite closely. We're 200 billion or so today in terms of market size. The entire subscription economy is projected to be north of 1 trillion by 2025. So that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
compelling.
And well, incredibly rapid ascent, and you can see why, because like I just look back over the last number of years. Um, the probably the last year I owned my creative agency, we actually had a cloud tool or two. Nobody else, like, this is 2011, 2012, right? I think we're using Harvest, and I don't know, Dropbox and a few others, but most of it was still everything else was desktop, and that's just on the software side. I'm not even talking about other services and things that we're using. And I look today, and you look, especially COVID accelerated things so much, how the businesses can't run without having, like, you almost have to have a multi-tab spreadsheet to keep track of everything you're paying for, because there's so much. Um, obvious advantages to it, but there's also, challenges to that we didn't experience back in the day either. So I want to talk a little bit about like where you are like today, like how you envision the subscription world. Like you said, everyone's moving to subscription. How are you envisioning some of these different like sectors and business models that are non-traditional in subscription being able to make that transition?
Well, I think the first main point is that not every business can become a subscription business overnight. If you're selling high-end luxury watches, it's very difficult to think about a subscription model, or at least one that's going to work at scale. And it's funny, I mentioned watches because Breitling was at one point, I want to say 2 years ago, was tinkering with a subscription model where you could access 3 or 4 Breitling watches and try them for a period of 2 or 3 months at a time, so long as you were paying into this subscription of X number of dollars a month. Very unusual. So it's almost like that was a brand that was trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. But if you are a business that you're selling, we say there's basically 3 categories of subscription commerce. 2 are more product oriented and 1 is services oriented. So if you're a product business, you can ask yourself, like, are we a replenishment type of a product? Like, are we a consumable that a customer runs out of and ultimately has to repurchase every 30, 60, 90 days? A protein powder, some sort of food item like peanut butter, diapers. Honest Company built their entire business starting with subscriptions on diapers. But it's that replenishment of a consumable product that will ultimately be the first step in getting you clear on your subscription strategy there. If you're not a consumable that someone is running out of every 30, 60, 90 days, can you curate your product in such a manner that people find it novel? Like we see the wine clubs and the cigar clubs and the cosmetic sample boxes peddled by Birchbox and Ipsy and BoxyCharm and these companies. That's that curation bucket. But on the B2B side and the services side, that's that access category where there's so many companies that live there. Streaming services, paid apps, SaaS companies, online dating sites, gym memberships, edtech and fintech. I mean, the list goes on, but can you gate something that's exclusive behind a paywall? We're seeing a big shift in media, right? Where media is gating their content behind a paywall or trying to gate some of their content behind a paywall and ask subscribers to pay to get access to certain exclusive content. So access is a big growing category.
I want to first of all, I want to dig into that Breitling thing and why you don't think it worked. But I recall a few years ago, I know Porsche and Volvo, if I remember right, were both doing a subscription model where it was like all in, so it's not, you're not gas, but basically everything else, your insurance and everything was all part of the subscription. And it would allow you to go a couple times a year and actually switch cars, like switch in and out of car. And I think they've all stopped that. But actually, that didn't sound like a bad idea to me. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. And I'm also curious why you think that the Breitling model didn't work, and will it come back in a form that will work?
It's hard to say why Breitling didn't work. I mean, I don't think people want to try different watches and rent different watches and give them back. I think the high-end luxury watch world is sort of a one and done. People seek out a watch. I'm sort of a semi-watch guy, so I can think about my own thinking around this. But you sort of spend some time on Chrono 24 and you seek out that one piece that you've been following for some time and maybe save up for it. Or you get something at a wedding. It becomes that heirloom that becomes so meaningful. It doesn't seem like something that would be like an access rental type of a play. Whereas on the automobile side, and Porsche Passport, I still think is active. I'll check after we get off today. Okay. But there are a number of car companies tinkering with this model that Porsche started with. because a lot of people can't afford to own a car. Ultimately, a lot of people can't even afford to lease a car or are demanding more flexible terms around their leases. They don't want to be locked into a 3 or 4 year lease. And so that hybrid is the subscription model that Porsche was testing. So you might pay a premium, $3,000-$4,000 a month to get access to a Porsche, but there's lots of benefits and value in that subscription fee, whereby you're not locked in. So you can swap cars. You need an SUV for the week, and then you're in the city, and so you don't need the SUV because you're not going up north or something. So you swap for a 911, or maybe you are status seeking or social signaling, and so you want to drive a Porsche and show it off. I'm not sure, but having the ability to access these cars in a way that feels really tangible and real, and not have to shell out 100 or 150 grand or commit to a lease over a 4-year period, I think is really compelling.
Yeah, I think in both, like they seem like there's something there, like there's an interesting thing there. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think with the watches, I think that the market they would be looking for is not the Chrono 24 group or the ones that are like watch geeks, like love. I kind of like watches too, so I know a little bit about
right.
But I wonder if there's a space for again, like it's almost like the car one. Is it like, are there people that they don't care that much about watches, but it's more of a status thing? But then I suppose they're probably not that interested in swapping them out either. So maybe there just isn't one there that kind of necessarily works in that space. But the car one seems pretty intriguing to me in a lot of ways. Like the idea that, if you're in a cold area, well, maybe you can have an SUV in the winter and the 911 in the summer. But the problem is that's what everybody else in the whole area is thinking too. So you start shifting cars down south or something over the winter, but
sure. Yeah. It
feels like there's gaps.
Yeah.
But I think there's room. There's things are still changing quite rapidly. Like we took a driverless car for the first time just about a month ago, and
a Waymo. Was it a Waymo?
A Waymo, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
we did that in October. It's awesome.
Yeah, they're really slick. We loved it. Like and honestly, getting in, I was like, I'm not sure if I'm gonna like this. Like, am I gonna get claustrophobic in the back seat? It drove about 30 feet, and I'm like, this thing's awesome.
Yeah,
right. Like, this is great. And what I realized that is like, suddenly I went from, I don't know if I like this to, I wish it came all the way up to our area. We're just outside the bubbles. We have to make it into the bubble. But what it showed me is like, there's alternatives to transportation that could fundamentally change things. And I could see a model where there is a subscription model of some type, because there's a level of service and quality in that you may want that I don't think you're going to get necessarily from Uber or on demand kind of stuff. And I can see these models, like the world's changing and these models are changing.
Yeah. You mentioned, the whole Uber thing. So Uber One, that's a subscription, right? You pay whatever the fee is. I'm not a member, so I don't know. I think it's around $9 a month, and you get access to various benefits: 5% off on all rides, priority pickup, and a few other things. Basically, what we're watching happen in real time is companies move to a paid loyalty or paid membership model, similar to what Amazon Prime has done successfully. The Amazon Prime playbook is very indicative of where the future of loyalty and membership is going. Starting with Amazon and that company flying in the face of what historically has been the tradition with loyalty programs, which is free points. Like we come from an era where people, for whatever reason, thought it was really attractive to collect points. Ultimately, no one understands how these loyalty points programs work. No one understands the thresholds or how to redeem their points or what their points are valued at. And these loyalty programs have very low usage, or people like to use the term high breakage, for those that understand that term. Amazon has done the opposite. They created a loyalty program called Prime that you actually have to pay for. There's no points. You pay for the program. and you get benefits when you become a member. Ultimately, that benefits the consumer because those dollars are reinvested into the Prime membership program to improve that value proposition. But you're paying for that anchor benefit, which is the free shipping or the next day shipping and all this stuff that Amazon throws at you. So companies are trying to tinker with this formula of like, what is our anchor benefit that's going to be the hook whereby somebody's going to sign up for that particular membership? And what are the other complementary benefits that we could throw in there to make our membership or loyalty program that much more compelling to a member? So if you look at Uber One or Dash Pass or Walmart Plus or any of these sort of fee for VIP loyalty programs, you'll see that they're following that Amazon Prime formula. There'll be an anchor benefit or a hook. That's the thing that people really want. And then there'll be maybe two other complementary benefits, 5% off, exclusive events, discounts that happen on holidays or whatever it might be. Those are the other complementary benefits. But ultimately, this is the future of loyalty and membership.
Well, that's fascinating, and just you got me. I almost got off track there because I started to think, wonder if there's some kind of interesting loyalty program we could do with Dryrun that would do this. And I've just started to like, they give them a little percentage off, but there's all these other training benefits and I just started going off track on that. And I'm guessing that may be where there's an opportunity for a business like ours, like a SaaS product, a B2B product. There's somewhere that you can maybe, I don't know, increase engagement or increase loyalty, referrals. I'm just off the top of my head. Does that sound like I'm in the area code or?
100%. So big and small, you could be a solopreneur. You could still follow this Amazon formula. What is my anchor benefit? What is the one thing that I sell of value that my customers really want? And then what are some of those other potential revenue drivers that I could sell into that particular subscriber or member? We have a lot of B2B clients that are in the knowledge services space. So consulting, training, education. We've done work for colleges and universities. I mean, everybody is trying to do the same thing, which is create this predictable subscription revenue. And what we're seeing happen now, at least on the B2B side and the knowledge services side of the world, is people have seen, okay, the success of massive open online course platforms like Coursera, Udemy, Udacity. One level down, you have, Masterclass, right? Can I learn how to play guitar from Santana? Well, yes, Santana has his own masterclass, and that's a subscription. Right down to, that coach or that trainer or that fitness personality that's saying like, hey, I do that. I train people on how to get fit and how to lose weight. I can create some content. I can create a subscription experience. I can develop a course if I'm teaching guitar or teaching coding or what have you. I can put that online and that can now live on Kajabi or Thinkific or Teachable. That could be my hook. That could be my anchor benefit. What else can I sell? Well, once they're a part of this course, can I develop a community off of that? Well, if you're in the fitness world, 100%, there's a potential for community because you could be teaching or coaching numerous clients who are trying to lose weight. Put them in a community of some kind and have them do challenges together, have them go through this experience together. And now we're seeing the rise of community as a primary revenue driver as well. So it's really interesting, I think, what people are tinkering with as it relates to creating these subscription or membership experiences.
Something because we of course are a subscription model business, but you're always looking to see like how can we offer more value, and obviously like on the other side, is there a way for us to be able to monetize some of that, right? So this is an interesting conversation. It'll just give me I'll be thinking about it all weekend, rolling through my head here a little bit because as an entrepreneur, it's like you can't shut your brain off. So I just want to get fast forward to like, let's talk a little bit about Scriberbase. Like, who should be talking with you today? How can you help them, and how should they get hold of you?
Businesses that want to create and or increase recurring revenue. That's who we help. So you could be a scale up or a startup. You could be a CEO of a Fortune 500 or a very mature business. so long as it's subscription, membership, recurring revenue oriented. That is our lane. You can find us online at scriberbase.com. You can contact me directly on LinkedIn. That's the only place I hang out. I don't have social media on purpose, but I do have LinkedIn, and I love LinkedIn. So I encourage anybody listening to hook up with me on LinkedIn. And my book is on Amazon. It's called The Subscription Boom, and it's also in stores across North America.
That's terrific. And thanks, everybody. Thanks again for joining us. Make sure you subscribe to our show, and join us next week for the next episode here. And again, if you're looking for a way to forecast your cash flow, model scenarios, if you're a multi-million-dollar business that has locations you got to deal with and currencies and a bunch of people, we're really good at that when it gets really complicated. So come and see us at dryrun.com. We'd love to help you out. Thanks again, Adam. I really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Blaine. Thanks for having me.